what's the story with sadness? What is it about? Do we have a cruel universe, a cruel creator? We make all these efforts to survive. You notice how difficult it is? Eat and drink and keep your body healthy, and then we live and we're sad. We live and we're depressed and we don't feel like. We live and we suffer. What's the story, you know? Why? Why all the sadness? Why all the suffering? Why? Is it something that we're not getting? Is there something about sadness that's just hidden from our eyes? Maybe the universe is good. Maybe our Creator is good. And our existence is good. And sadness has some deeper meaning that's not now to be experienced in an intellectual way, but directly in the heart, to understand sadness from a totally different and deep and direct way. So in this lecture we'll touch the unintegrated ways, the ignorant ways, the harmful ways of managing sadness, and the beneficial ways, the integrated, the harmonious ways of handling sadness. And this is an intro for a 7-week full-on immersion out of sadness, or out of finding the enlightening gift of sadness in 7 weeks. And we will start with the unintegrated aspects of sadness.
So also just to fill you in on the specific approach that we've been coming with in all the modules of this emotional healing ongoing course that we are doing. The idea is that both from a, let's say, more holistic psychological perspective, but especially from a tantric perspective, emotions don't pose a problem. Emotions are an expression of life. It's like emotion, there's motion in there, there's movement in there. So it's movements that happen within our inner universe. And these movements, or what we could refer to as energy, or what we would call in Tantra Shakti, life itself, these movements, they not only are not to be avoided, but they are actually to be embraced and to be enjoyed, and can make our life actually worth living when we know how to deal with them. And this is why the approach within each of these modules, now we had one on guilt, now we have one on sadness, it's to come one on fear, and then one on anger, and then one on joy, and so forth. Each time we take this approach of understanding that an emotion is not to be avoided, it's not to be put into place or to be fixed or anything like that, but rather it is to be integrated. It is to be what we would call in tantric terms polarized with our consciousness. It's to be embraced in order to become something wonderful within our inner universe. So when we speak about unintegrated emotions and integrated emotions, then we speak about exactly that. Is an emotion placed within our being in such a way that it is nourishing, that it is helpful, that it is revealing to our deeper truth? Or, in the case of being unintegrated, is it placed within our being in a spot where maybe it doesn't even belong, or we have suppressed it into some place and don't even feel it? Or we mix it with things that are unrelated and where it's simply not helpful and not healthy and not harmonious and not allowing us to live life to its fullest. So when we speak of these two categories, integrated, unintegrated emotions, this is what we are referring to. And there are some very concrete things, and we will go into much detail when we will have the module starting from next Sunday. There are some very precise things that we can say about unintegrated sadness. So when the sadness and pain and grief that we experience just by being human, to be quite frank, when that one doesn't find its place in our inner universe, we will have some very clear indicators of that. And we want to tell you a little bit how that is, and you'll be like, yeah, thanks a lot. Nothing new here, because all of us have experienced unintegrated sadness and unintegrated pain and grief. One of the tricky parts with sadness and pain is that there's nothing to fix. In the last module that we've addressed guilt in, it was a lot about understanding transformation and understanding our wish to better ourselves. It's a moral type of emotion. Sadness is not at all so. It is a very, very basic emotion. It's one of the first things you ever feel as a little infant. So it presents itself very differently in our being and is therefore not so much fixable with some outer means, we could say. And as we will go into the module, we will see that dealing with sadness has a lot to do with just being, with sitting, with touching, with having contact, with allowing to feel what we feel. And when sadness is not integrated within our being, you could imagine that when we don't allow ourselves to touch, to feel, to be with the pain and grief that just come along with life, then two major things happen. One thing is that we will be out of touch, right? Because if we don't touch, we don't feel, we don't allow for pain and sadness to occur within our inner universe, which is when they become disintegrated, when they don't find their place, then what will be the direct result of that is to be somewhat out of touch, to not really be deeply in touch with who we are and what are the feelings within our soul. When you come out of touch with sadness, so when sadness is not integrated, is not seen, is not approached with consciousness within our inner universe, the first thing that happens is joy diminishes as well. Because if you don't know how to be sad, it's very difficult to know how to be happy. So in general, we can say the entire experience of life dials down because we somewhat come out of touch. And it is something that you can actually see just when you compare the, just the outer manifestations of a little child as to a grown-up. You can just maybe take a video or some pictures of yourself when you were a child and just look at how expressive your being was, both very, very willing to, blurt out that sadness and also anger, of course. And then on the other hand, being so joyful and being so willing to experience fully everything that is going on inside. And then when we move towards being grown-ups, one of the major things that we start to do is we try to find ways to not be in touch so much with the pain of living, because it's sort of excruciating. And when we then move away from being in touch with all the difficult feelings of life, which has a lot to do with pain and sadness, then what happens is we gradually come out of touch and we start to basically numb ourselves. Maybe just a little bit. So maybe we have, a little extra Facebook than we actually need, a little painkiller, as we would call it. Or maybe we would have a little more ice cream and sweets than actually our body would like. Or maybe we are, having some relationships that are not so meaningful, and so forth, in order to distract ourselves from that being out of touch with the sadness and pain that inevitably exists just by being alive, and that can actually be, as we will hear, integrated in a very beautiful way when we just know how. So this coming out of touch and then placing a small painkiller, a bigger painkiller in time can of course become a bigger and bigger problem. So your classic painkiller would be an addiction, right? Any kind of addiction. It might be an emotional eating. It might be a full-blown heroin addiction, right? Now, I'm not saying everything always is has underlying to it only sadness, but very often the core is some sort of pain that hasn't been dealt with. So we could go from mild painkillers to stronger painkillers to painkillers that will kill us and not so much the pain. Like, for example, a full-blown drug addiction might have that issue to it. So when we come towards, let's say, when we come more and more out of touch with our sadness and our pain, and therefore not having it integrated within our inner universe, we will come closer and closer to what we would typically call depression. And of course, within this module, this will be the, let's say, pathology that we will talk about. And depression happens because we are moving away from feeling sadness and pain, and then we numb ourselves. And the more numb we become, knowing that there's something lurking in the background that wants to be looked at, and we're just not doing it, and we would finally not even get out of bed anymore in the morning and lose all our life zest, you could say, that direction of depression is when we don't touch our sadness and pain in the way that they, let's say, are asking for in order to be placed correctly within our being. From that numbness, we very often have a connection to anxiety. We very often have this sort of living more on the surface of our own being, feeling superficial, feeling or like not having the capacity to go into depth with anyone because the depth hurts, right? So we sort of try to avoid that. There might be victimizing involved and so forth. So a lot can come from that movement, coming out of touch and then going towards numbness. And the other big thing that comes along with unintegrated sadness, so one is coming out of touch, and the other one is from this lifelessness, it comes a gradual heaviness. It comes a gradual, just first dimming down of the lights. Hopelessness is a classic one when sadness is not integrated. And as our being becomes more and more heavy, and there's less and less, motion, you could say, then also there's less and less emotion, less and less being in touch with what we feel. So they sort of perpetuate one another. We move away from the pain and sadness. We numb ourselves, and the more numb we become, the more out of touch with life, with motion itself we become, and the more heavy and hopeless and self-indulgent and passive and pessimistic and so forth we become. And from that, of course, we want to move further away from that pain, and it might perpetuate in that kind of way. So throughout the sadness module, we will address this in a lot of detail to see what are the different degrees of sadness, how does it play out in different ways within our being when it is not integrated, so you might be able to identify what is somehow the issue and then the underlying mechanism that you might be dealing with. And then, of course, we will learn how to now integrate sadness. Let's see how that looks.
How does that look?
How does it look?
When we take this raw energy of sadness, when Damien speaks, we can hold hands. When I speak, she needs a helmet with my hand movements. So when we take the raw energy of sadness that I'm now analogically holding in my hands, and we treat it correctly, we give sadness enough love, enough attention, enough awareness, enough wisdom and understanding, sadness becomes a jewel, becomes a diamond. You take the ox poo and you make it into compost, and from the compost, life, wheat and bread, mangoes and flowers from poo. So sadness itself, when harnessed correctly, and the harnessing is not done, we don't bully sadness. You don't bully, come on, be some flowers, sadness, give me some diamonds. It's a female. You need to court sadness, you need to love sadness, you need to wisely polarize it with attention, with care, with delicacy, and with intelligence. And this is what the 7 weeks will be about, how to do that, because it's quite a delicate mechanism, but easy to understand all in all. So if we take sadness like that, sadness will reveal to us the depth of our being. If you know how to be sad properly, you become a poet. Everybody that knows sadness knows poetry. They come together. If you go deep enough, It's like these divers. They would take a stone to go very, very deep. The old divers to go very, very deep. So sadness can take you deep, and as you go deep, I don't know. Did you ever go deep? If you go deep, it's sometimes scary. It's sometimes horrible. Sometimes wonderful. But deep, deep is extraordinary. And sadness itself. How many times, did you have in your life, or you heard from friends? In the depth of sadness, I had this understanding about meaning. Yes, sadness is the emotion to find meaning. In the absence of meaning, there is depression. And because of the numbness that Blandine spoke about. But if you take away the numbness, and you just man up, also the women, man up in front of sadness, and just be sad, then sadness itself brings meaning. It brings great meaning. Through the depth, through the deep understanding, through the deep contact with ourselves. And the idea with this course is that we'll train you 7 weeks, commando sadness. We train and do exercises and so forth, so that next time sadness comes, because you might be sad in the future also, next time sadness comes, you say, okay, now, I'm with you, beloved sadness. Take me to the core of my being, without getting confused, without getting passive, without getting victimizing or pitying ourselves in the process. Because there's also that. Some of these artists, they go to the depth of meaning, but they feel so self-important and self-victimizing about their pain and so passive and don't touch me about it. No, to go to the depth, but in a common sense way, in a humble way. The second gift that sadness gives us, again, if we polarize her correctly, if we love sadness consciously, and we really understand the ways of sadness, sadness brings us compassion and empathy and care for other people. If you really know your sadness, you care about other people's sadness. You care about other people's suffering. And if you don't care about other people's suffering and you hear this, you say, well, what's the big deal about caring about other people's suffering? Try it. It's great. Try to really care. Try to see somebody in pain and really care from all your heart. It's ecstatic. It's hard. But it's ecstatic. It's wonderful. When you really care, when we really care, we come out of ourselves. We are uplifted. And if we really meet our sadness and we see somebody else in pain, we see somebody else sad, we're like, I know what that feels like. I met it face to face. It was really hard. Now I'll be kind to you. And when you are kind from a place of compassion, all the universal compassion will empower you. And you see how wise you become, how caring, how intelligent, how resourceful, how vital. Yeah, and if you look alive, Mother Teresa, Teresa of Calcutta, and other, St. Francis of Assisi, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, this burning care empowered them so much. And that's happening through the sadness. The third gift that sadness gives us, if integrated correctly, is great longing. People that pray, says, well, I had a good day and the prayer was mediocre. And then I had a bad day and I prayed. The heavens cried with me. Everything opened. There was a ray of light from here to infinity. I was so sad. Yeah. There is something about it. Because again, it's taking from the first mechanism. Yeah. Both Christian saints, Hindu saints, and just mystics and practitioners, also Sufis, also Jewish saints, Rabbi Nachman, he says, you must have your heart broken all the time. That's how you become a mystic, by having your heart broken all the time with the proper longing. Not now, I long for a new laptop, I long for, I don't know what, Germany to win the World Cup or something. I long for more sex in my life or something. But the true longing of the soul, when sadness is there, we dive to the root, to the ground of that longing. And we realize the one that wants cake, the one that wants sex, the one that wants the World Cup, the one that wants money, in the essence, wants that spiritual perfection. Everybody, in the depth of their soul, they want that freedom, even they don't know they have a soul. In the depth of all the desires, it comes there. And you would attain and fulfill the desire of the soul when? When the longing is strong enough. And how will the longing become strong? When you integrate sadness. So why is there so much sadness, and is it a bad creator, a bad universe that makes us sad? No. Sadness is a gift in disguise. And when we open the gift, it hurts. And we grow up. And we become responsible, empathic, compassionate, deep, filled with the correct longing. The sadness has this, it's like an acid that slowly dissolves egoism, slowly dissolves superficiality. Sadness, when properly, is just a blow in the face for everything that is superficial. You cannot, you know this, you are in the midst of a stupid argument or of a stupid endeavor, and then somebody really close dies. It just, all that just collapses, it disappears in front of that great sadness, because it connects us to the very depth. Well, if handled correctly, every day you can go to the very depth. You don't need to have every day somebody close to you die. But if you handle the existential sadness correctly, you can live from this depth of depth. Blandine, she loves Jordan Peterson. Have you seen his face? He holds that.
All the time.
He holds that. Even the face of J. Krishnamurti, if you know, the face of Ramakrishna, the face of many of the Christian saints, they would have a canal here, physical, from all the tears. When sin would come, or the thought of sin, they would wash it with their tears. What's the mechanism? Yes, not Saint Anthony. In the Philokalia, I don't remember who. He says, when the thought of sin comes to me, I wash it with my tears. Sin comes, to take from the Christian tradition. Temptation, anything stupid, superficial, comes to a degree. And then when you remember the deep sadness, the deep longing, which is sweet, is ecstatic, it destroys the superficial. It dissolves. Anybody who's praying intensely knows that. When you start to pray and you focus on the very essential things, the superficial falls. And that's a very good thing. The superficial is our painkiller. And the sadness destroys the painkiller. And yes, there is pain, but then it's real, it's me. And eventually, if it's me long enough, I take care of the real issues responsibly, and it becomes ecstatic. So sadness makes us mature. Sadness gives longing. Sadness gives empathy and compassion. It gives depth and responsibility if handled correctly. In this course, we will take sadness from a few levels, as we've done with all the other. We did one about guilt, yeah? So we'll take the physical aspect of sadness, the hormones. If you think serotonin, something is, you need to get your serotonin infinitely big and then you will never be sad, think again. We'll speak about the hormones, serotonin and dopamine, and other hormones and neurotransmitters, GABA transmitters, and so forth in relation to sadness. And it's really important to understand the physiology, to understand when you eat this and sleep like that, that will make your body feel sad. And when you eat like this and sleep like that, will make your body feel optimistic, hopeful, happy. So we'll speak about that and also give some plants and also all sorts of things that would help. St. John's wort is a clue. And other plants that really help overcoming sadness, especially in its gross effects. So we'll take care of the physical side of sadness. We'll take care of the energetic side of sadness, the passivity of it, and how to dynamize it, and bring quite a lot of research on how, by dynamizing the being, we take care of the unintegrated side of sadness. And as one of the major parts, we'll speak about the mental, the cognitive side of sadness. Sadness has a few ingredients, and if you put these ingredients one way, and you take care to manage some inner resources correctly, and we'll bring all sorts of special Blandinian charts about and then graphs about how to understand how this mechanism works. So you also have a visual there. And to really understand, well, if I mix sadness with this ingredient, I will go down. And if I mix sadness with this ingredient, I'll go up. And sadness itself is composed of these ingredients. And if I place them like that, I'll receive the gifts of sadness rather than another kick in my face. So that's the cognitive side of sadness. We'll touch the interhuman side of sadness, loneliness, and how proper togetherness, proper contact, deep contact will help us to digest the sadness. Superficial contact will probably make it worse. Terrible loneliness will make it even worse, and so forth. And we'll speak about the social aspect of sadness, and eventually we will rise to the spiritual side, to sadness as a great, great spiritual gift and integrate it somehow into the highest aspects. We will have our beloved teacher that we love deeply, Mikushor, Nikolai Katarina, or Adinata Ananda, who has been personally my teacher for 20 years now, and he's a great Sanskrit scholar and a great scholar of Tantra, but also of various traditions. He gives courses in I Ching and Enneagram and archetypes of the soul, and in Tibetan yoga, and courses about Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. And the main thing is the Kashmirian Shaivism, that he gives an ongoing course for 20-something years, verse by verse with the sutras. And he's quite an expert when it comes to emotions and the alchemy of emotions. So he will give the opening, the honorable opening class, and speak about general alchemy of emotion and the alchemy of sadness. So we're very honored to have him with us, and the other 6 lectures. It will be the 2 of us and the Radu of us, so the 3 of us with Radu that will give the rest of it. There will be exercises, there will be homework, there will be sharing in the group, like
Yoga.
we often do. There will be yoga and meditations and godly attributes and so forth. So this is about the course. And now an exercise, no? Okay.
Little tiny exercise, and then all your questions and whatever you might want to say and share also after the exercise. It will be super mini, small, so we can manage good in time. So I invite you all just to come into an upright position. You can be comfortable, but still with a straight back, so you can go better into your inner universe. And you can close your eyes and just take a deep breath. Relaxing your body deeply. Breathing a few times deeply. Arriving fully here now. And as we will dive into our heart, it can be helpful to place one hand onto the heart if you want to, it's not a must. And I invite you to simply connect to sadness, pain, grief that might exist within your inner universe. You don't need to necessarily remember anything specific. It's not important to have a story, but just to feel that sadness is there in your inner universe, like it is for absolutely every human being. And for a moment you can become aware of what happens within your own inner universe when sadness is not so integrated. Maybe just give it a moment and check what happens when you come out of touch with your sadness. when it's misplaced, when it's mixed, when it gets heavy and pessimistic and hopeless. Just watch in a witness state what sadness does in your inner universe when it's not integrated. And if you feel, it can be helpful to come more in touch with our feelings by embodying it, just like adjusting our bodily posture to how we feel the unintegrated sadness, the numb, the heavy, the pessimistic part of our grief, of our pain. How's your body posture when that emotion takes over in your inner universe? This is just a marker to become aware, okay, this is how it's embodied when I feel my pain, my grief, in its unintegrated way. And once that is marked, I invite you to come back to an upright position. Take a deep breath. And then to stay in touch with the sadness. But this time to just allow the sadness to take you deeper, as if you're zooming into the sadness, allowing it to reveal its light, its beauty, its depth, its soulfulness. What does sadness do in your inner universe when it takes its integrated form, when it guides you deeper into your soul? When it holds within it a gift, a light. And then see if you could embody that. How would you sit, even just with a small adjustment? How would you embody the integrated sadness within your being? How would your body want to sit, to breathe, to be, when you're in touch with that state of the revealing, the light-filled sadness? And just mark that in your consciousness. You can once more come back to the initial position and just feel how right here, right now, sadness exists in your inner universe, as it does in absolutely every human being. And notice how you have a choice in front of this sadness, and how there's a choice to embrace it and to allow it to reveal its most lightful and beautiful, soulful nature. You can take a deep breath and just relax. Relax your hand. And take a moment and just feel, how are you now after becoming aware of the different modalities of sadness in your inner universe? And once you're ready to return, you can do it slowly, looking down, opening your eyes, and then looking around, bringing the state with you. I have been processing some things that came up, and my heart was heavy with sadness, and as I was listening to the lecture and meditation, I was able to go beyond the sadness to the actual need that sadness was coming from. A need for connection and unconditional love. As I gave these to myself, the sadness dissipated and transmuted into joy. Thank you so much. Very beautiful.
Proper. The sadness course is like you do it once for life. And then from there on, you will move from, 40% integrated sadness, 60% unintegrated. So normally when there's a sad situation, it's mostly harmful and a little good. And if you do this 7 weeks well, it will become your habit. It will become a second nature to handle sadness better, not perfectly, but better. And hopefully that will stay for life. It's just every time, because you will get sad a few more times, and then every time you say, okay, this is sadness, this is the ingredients. In this case, I'm sad because ingredient A is like this, ingredient B is like that. So I increase this one, I take care of this one, I add this ingredient, and there it is. The sadness is like 80% integrated. When I feel sad, mostly I get gifts from it. I don't like it. It's painful and stuff like that. But mostly it gives me gifts. It gives me strength. It gives me empathy. It gives me longing. It gives me authenticity. It takes me deep in myself. I become more confident through the sadness because I'm in contact so deep with myself and so deep contact with others. And that's just something that will stay. And the Tantra course is something that is ongoing, and its goal is much higher. It's all the way towards the highest spiritual accomplishments. And that's something that you do, and it's going on for years. We're in the 15th year of the course. We have our course on Tuesdays and so forth, and we just continue because it's going to take some time for that. But sadness is that's that area. And if you do those 5 things differently, how you eat, how you sleep, how you think of sadness, how you manage the energy of sadness, and you get the hang of it in these 7 weeks, you'll just do it to a degree. Hopefully. That's why we do the course, so that hopefully you'll do that for the rest of your life. And then sadness will have just a different place for life, and it will not be as overwhelming, as paralyzing, as it drags me down, makes me lonely, makes me isolated, makes me passive, and then I'm afraid of situations that might make me sad and so forth. But rather, okay, here comes sadness again. Okay, I take out my sadness kit and I take good care of it, and I know it's hard, but I know it's also given me so much gifts in the past when I used it correctly, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to handle sadness wisely, like a grown-up, with responsibility, with heart, with authenticity. Okay, let's do it. So that's the idea, to give you both the tools and the inspiration to handle sadness like that. And it's a standalone.
The nice thing about this course is that you can book it module by module. So whatever interests you, you can stop by and go into that. And if then you need some time to do other things and have other priorities in life, then you do that. And then maybe another subject comes that is very important. So like this, you can portion it quite easily. In the case of this course, it's not such a long-term commitment.
Indeed, if you handle also the physical side of sadness correctly, it's easier to handle it emotionally. Because that's it. The sadness has its bodily part on the muscles, on the hormones and so forth, on the nerve system, the energetic part and the mental part. And wherever you take care of it, it will make also the other sides work better. For me, like as a teenager, the amount of sadness, the amount of suffering was like, it's no change in the outer world is going to get me anywhere. And then at quite a young age, I start to, I have to rethink about life and emotions and the mind and me and my needs. And so I started quite at a young age with psychology and philosophy and spirituality. And then, now being a psychologist and so forth for quite some years, and getting a lot of people through sadness, and also as Tantra and yoga teachers, quite a big number of students, and just walking with people through this process, and walking with ourselves and with each other through this process. and whatever we read and learned from our teachers and from university and books, then that became this model. And we saw what works inside of us, what works with people, what works in in-depth sessions, what works in short talks, what works in the body, what works in the mind, what works energetically. And we chunked it together. We've been giving this course now for 7 years. 7 years? 7 years? 7 and a bit. In all sorts of ways, and every time we have a new group and we see how they react, and then we return to and rewrite it, and old stuff, okay, and now we do it again, and we check, and that's why we speak about, at least from my side, that's why I speak about sadness.
I believe, because you say it's not so typical to talk about sadness, and that is quite true. Mostly what is spoken about is depression and grief. And I feel both of these can be understood quite well if we understand the more basic emotion of sadness behind it. And we would have this as a goal as well within this module to address a more, let's say, root cause level of certain issues. You know, not that now everybody with a major depression, you just look at, you have the root cause of sadness and that's it, you're done. That's usually not how it goes. So these courses, they are made for people who don't have, like, at least not a heavy pathology, or what we would call a neurotypical, like with a rather normal issues, just normal human beings, so to say, without having full-blown difficulties at this level. And in that condition, you can understand a lot of nuances within your being, like pain, like grief, like depression, and sort of like a whole range of feelings and issues that connect to this core bit of understanding sadness. And sometimes these very simple understandings of just mechanisms and ingredients of sadness can actually help you to have a lot of profound revelations just within your own being without us even just saying it, right? Just by looking at those very simple building blocks of various complex mechanisms within your being. So that's why also we would want to address it.
You can listen to the recordings. If you can't come on time, you can listen after to the recordings. They remain available, not forever, but for a week, 2, 3, they remain available. Did I forget something?
Probably. It's good enough.
Okay, good enough. Okay. So let's take a sweet moment of gratitude. Generously send out love. And with this love, we embrace this whole planet with a prayer for peace. Very good, my dears. Kiss you. We'll see you next time.
See you. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.
For more information, courses, lots of articles, videos and podcasts on Tantra, yoga and spirituality, visit tantrayogathailand.com.
What makes you talk about sadness?
Very sad and difficult life.
Exactly. This is a microphone.
Sorry.